This is an excerpt from the Taylor Street Sorrows, a novel that Kinko's is going to publish soon. We can start this thing on any house in the neighborhood. You can take away the street signs, cover up the address of every 2-flat and storefront, blindfold me, turn me around in circles, and plop me on the porch of any house in Taylor Street, and I can tell you what's in a shoebox hidden away in some closet. Easiest would be to start on a shelf in Mama Tina's bedroom, though, where there's a shoebox filled with 16mm films. At any time I could summon the image of her following Breezy around with what in my memory is an umbrella of pure light. There's no shoeboxed evidence that camera was ever powered anywhere other than in Mama Tina's apartment above Tootsie and Tina's Italian ice stand. It was the only flat in the old neighborhood you could take out a camera and flip on, and no one would be afraid of that chigunk of sound from that umbrella of light and what it meant, that the occasion would be recorded. Mama Tina had an eye on everyone that ever walked in that apartment. There were darknesses downstairs and next door and at the Italian club on the corner and everywhere else in the neighborhood, but Mama Tina's apartment was clean. There are only 36 rolls of film, but as I summon each of these stories you're about to hear, none of which are in that shoebox, and many of which I recall happily, I see them under the sharp clarity of that same umbrella of light. It's as if Mama Tina's right there with the camera on her shoulder and Breezy is right there with that source of light. I'm telling you some of these stories so I can keep them. The rest of them I just want out of my head. My first memory is this. I'm 3 years old and we were all of us at a family reunion at the Swallow Cliff Forest Preserve. My father is holding me by my ankles over the toilet seat of the porta potty at the bottom of the toboggan run, which is closed for the summer. I am hovering over the chamber filled with toilet paper and human waste in a sea of water blue as ink. I am reaching, my hands pink with sun, for his cell phone. It rests on a tiny fetid hillock growing from the blue water. Above me he's laughing and holding the door open for him so that my father can breathe. My half-brother Paulie is laughing too. He's 10. My father is speaking inside of his own laughter and I am shaking with it. He's holding both of my ankles with only one hand now so that he can point. I'm certain he will drop me. Look, he says, that's Frankie Bighead shit. I never seen shit so thick. Most of the truths of that memory, my truths that is, my father does not include in his frequent retellings of that story. Paulie laughing, for one. Paulie holding open the door of the portable so that my father won't suffocate in the putrid steam of the enclosure. I remember the blue, the island of toilet paper, all that shit and piss, and my father holding me upside down and laughing. And Paulie holding the door open so my father could breathe, and Paulie laughing too. But I'm not certain how much else is fact. Case in point, there were no cell phones in 1966. There might have been sunglasses I was reaching for, or a watch. And I'm not even sure they even started using that blue chemical yet. My father, Tootsie Infelice, has been adding things to the shit and the blue of that story for 40 years. Even while Tootsie was away at college, that's what they called prison. He's added tampons, a fountain pen, Cousin Tommy's colostomy bag and one of his catheters, a wedding ring, a $100 bill, Jimmy the Bomber's middle finger, bullets, and one of the Freddy the Fence's $50 cigars, and a blood-soaked toupee. Brianna, my sister, she says Tootsie's as full of shit as that porta potty. All I know for sure is that he almost dropped me in that fucking thing. And even after I retrieved whatever it was he dropped, he didn't even set me back on the ground so I could walk like a fucking human. He carried me upside down all the way back to that giant tent where 100 infelices were drinking wine and smoking cigars and planning terror. The pounding of his steps across the long open field were not enough to quiet the hammering of blood in my head. I suppose he thought it'd be funnier if I was still upside down when he told the story. This way everybody could participate more completely in the red-faced spectacle of me, Dante Florentino, infelice. This part I only remember because Adriana told me 1,000,000 times, and also because I need good things to remember. When Tootsie finally plopped me in the cedar chips under the tent, septic blue dye on my fingertips, it was Adriana, 2 years older than Paulie, who finally came to my rescue. She slapped my father 3 times, took the shit-tainted phone without a hint of concern for herself, set it on the ground, cleaned my hands, pulled me to her chest like a mother, and kissed me 1,000 times. And then a cell phone rang. Adriana says she remembers the cedar chips trembling with the ring of it, and everyone laughing. Next, she tossed the phone to Tootsie, and my father, who never heard a phone ring that he didn't answer. He caught the phone, flipped it open, and put it to his ear. When I ask her, tell me this story again, Adriana says, shit on his hands, shit in his ear, shit at the edge of his mouth, is what she says. Everybody watching. Nobody laughing anymore. I want to remember the silence that follows the sudden end of that laughter. For me, though, the principal betrayal is my half-brother Paulie, laughing, abetting my father by holding open the porta potty, and then walking backward in front of us where I can't see him, but I could still hear his cheap go-along laugh. I was only 3, but I knew you weren't supposed to do that. And it is no consolation to me today, many years later, that Paulie is no longer able to laugh at that story. Neither is it a consolation that the history of my family is in the piss and shit of that story. Adriana. It doesn't feel right calling her Adriana, though I love that name, and it belongs to our daughter now. We all called her Breezy. She did her best to protect me from that history. I suppose they all did. Mama Tina, Gia, Sherry, and even Julia. And this memoir, if that's the right name for it, is the only way I can think to repay them. When we were kids, Mama Tina and Breezy and Sherry Palmisano used to take me and Gia to Kittyland on our birthdays. Twice every summer we went. We knew we were getting close to Kittyland whenever we passed the billboard for the Magicist Carpet Company on the Eisenhower. The sign was a giant pair of red lips as big as a fucking house, and they cast a spell on us. Breezy sat in the back car of the seat with us, and when she's the back seat of the car with us, that is, when she saw the Magicist lips coming up on the left side of the highway, she tortured us with kisses. She couldn't help herself. The Magicist sign was a curse. It made her twist in her place as soon as we got on that highway, and the closer we came to it, the more she quivered in her seat. She held her legs from trembling by pressing her hand on her thighs with all the strength she could muster, and when her lips began to pucker and turn toward one of us, she would fight against them by forcing her chin away from us with her other hand. No! No! She would tell her lips, and G and I would laugh and move all the way to the other side of the car. We would squeeze against each other to protect ourselves from the possession the Magicist lips took of Breezy. Her eyes rolled in her head. She braced herself by stiff-arming the seat in front of her and forcing herself into the right corner of the back seat, but as hard as she fought against the power of the Magicist lips, she could do nothing to stop their control over her. Stop! She would tell the Magicist lips, no! Please! What is happening to me? She would say, one word forcing her chin toward her left shoulder, and the next word forcing her chin to the right. And Gia, who always lost our battles to sit next to the door on the left, would try to switch places with me again, and when she could not, she would claw at the armrest to pull herself closer to me. No! Breezy could not control the extreme swings of her head. You will not take me over! In the front seat, Mama Tina and Mrs. Palmisano would laugh, or shake their heads, or pretend fear by covering their mouths, or in some other way would feign great agony at the demons fighting for Breezy's soul. Oh, not again, Mrs. Palmisano would say. Why must we always take the Eisenhower to Kittyland, Tina? Can't help myself, Breezy would scream, taking over me. And Mama Tina would hit the steering wheel of the old Pontiac and say, damn it, why didn't anyone remind me to take North Avenue? In the back seat, G and I would be too occupied laughing and screaming and wriggling and smashing into each other to remind Mama Tina that we had warned her repeatedly to take North Avenue. The demons would always win. The only thing for us to do under their power was be tortured with kisses. Relentless kisses that made us laugh and squirm and twist. We buried our heads in our laps and pressed our eyes shut to protect ourselves from Breezy's kisses, but there was no stopping them. Breezy plays a role in my second memory too, as does Polly and Felice. Among the more conspicuous scars that chronicle my half-brother's sins is a purple hole in the valley between the muscles of his shoulder and chest, just below his left collarbone. I'm about to tell you the origins of that scar to get it out of the way, and we'll be done with it then. I was 4 years old, and though I was present in the room the day he received the injury that would become the scar, I didn't see it happen. Paulie had called me into his room to draw with him that morning, which is what we did for a little while, but just until he came up with the idea for his half-brother Dante to go under his blanket. Breezy, who had been probably wondering where Dante had disappeared to and for how long he'd been gone, was in the hallway calling my name and screaming Paulie's nickname, which was "You son of a bitch," and then listening at the door, and then screaming Paulie's name again, and then turning the doorknob, and then she was an explosion of splintered wood through the locked door, and Paulie's hand was on the little boy's head, pulling him off or pushing him off, and into the room like a fucking animal was Breezy. She whipped the covers off Dante, not meaning to pull his hair, and she was red-faced, and her arm was in the air, and at the end of it there was a pencil, and then the pencil was stuck in Paulie's chest near his collarbone, and Paulie was screaming and bleeding. Frankie Bighead watched over our house in those days, and when he heard Paulie scream, he ran into the bedroom, and he saw the blood, and he saw the pencil in Breezy's hand, and he saw Paulie bleeding and holding his chest, and he asked what the fuck happened. And Breezy just dropped the pencil and picked me up. And that's all I remember about that day. It is my second memory. My guess is that Dr. Bryan came over and fixed up Paulie. I've often wondered what Paulie said to Frankie Bighead and what Frankie Bighead told Dr. Bryan, and why, despite their separate loyalties to Tootsie, they kept their mouths shut. But I'm certain it was not the first secret that either of them kept. They had lived on Taylor Street for a long time by then. I don't know how many words are in a book, or how many are in a pencil, but I at least begin the story with the pencil Breezy used to save me from my half-brother Paulie and Felice that day. I'm several pages in now, and I have already sharpened the pencil twice. The sharpener is a replica of the Tower of Pisa, and among the shavings in the basin, the first pepperings of lead and the first jagged-edged umbrellas of wood are dark with Paulie and Felice's blood. Thank you.